Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on the Go Get It podcast with Rob Butler. For episode 4, I have my good friend Tim Matthews, who's the Senior VP of Operations for Lifemark Health. What's amazing about Tim is the direction he's taken to get to the job that he's always wanted. It's interesting to hear how you can run a sports franchise, but also work in corporate Canada, and how all of those different experiences can lead to that ultimate goal. So stick around and join me on the Go Get It podcast, and let's go get it.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Welcome to the Go Get It podcast, Tim Matthews.
Thanks for having me, buddy. This is awesome. I'm excited.
Senior VP of Operations. That sounds like a big title. Is this how long you've been in this particular role for Lifemark?
I just crossed 6 months. So still relatively new, figuring out the organization, how it ticks, those kinds of things. But interestingly enough, I actually knew Lifemark 10 years ago. I was with an ownership group, and it was one of the portfolio companies. So I joke that I knew Lifemark at 100 clinics, and I came back when it's at 350 clinics now, 2 ownership groups later. So it's in a way, it's been like coming home. So you talk about sort of not having a linear career path. Not many people do. This is one that really sort of had a few twists and turns, but it's fun to be back, and I'm having a great time.
Well, that's why you're going to be perfect for this. Because I think the reality is, as much as people are at university and they say, oh, I want to be there in 10 years or 15 years. If I look through my group of contacts, friends, family, I don't know. Not many. Yeah. Not that they don't get there eventually, but maybe it's in a much different path than they first set out to kind of follow. So backing up a little bit, what comes to mind? Like vintage, I'm thinking early to mid 90s would be my probably first memory. Where do you think we were? What comes to mind when I ask that question?
So I actually did think about this, and it instantly popped into my head, and you're going to laugh because I know way too much. I know way too much detail about it. It was my first race in juvenile, which is now under 14, alpine ski racing. And it was at Toronto Ski Club. It was a GS. And I'm standing on the hill with Chris Sion going through inspection. And I look over my shoulder and I see this giant. And I look at Chris and I go, do we have to race that man? And Sion, he makes a joke about it. And I look over, I go, no, he's got and I didn't even know what the academy was at that time, right? So I see this National Ski Academy emblem, and I'm completely freaking out. And of course, it's Rob Butler. You were like a man amongst boys. I
was tall. I was tall
at that age. And so I was totally freaked out that we were going to have to race that man. Yeah, that's my first memory of you. Yeah.
Okay, that's not a bad memory. Did it go okay? Did you make out okay?
Oh, not on the day. No, I was terrible, but it worked out in the end. We ended up being, of course, teammates at the ski academy, and realized that our moms went to high school together and all sorts of good stuff along the way. But yeah.
So early 90s.
Yeah.
Nirvana's popular. Pearl Jam's on the radio. That vintage.
Sia and I were doing a lot of East Coast hip hop back in those days. You were really deep into Nine Inch Nails.
Was I?
I remember that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Trent Reznor was always going. What was that like? Isuzu Trooper that you would drive with the sound system?
Isuzu Trooper, buddy, that was a Suzuki Sidekick.
Okay, so I'm not far off.
You're pretty darn close. And I swear that thing could still be on the road had we intended to keep it. But that was a great era.
Yeah, good times.
Okay, good. So we're on the same page around the same time. And then, for the audience, we then went on to do a number of years together, traveling around, ski racing, having a lot of fun. So you can see why this is going to be fun. There's a lot of stories there that you're going to remind me of as you're talking through some of the things that you'd like to recommend to the audience that you would either encourage them to do, or even things that maybe you would do differently upon retrospect. So let's just kick it off. I mean, in terms of where you're at today, can you give us an idea of what the first thing that you would have either encouraged someone to do to be able to take a similar path, or something you've learned along the way that they could use in their own decision-making process? What comes to mind?
Yeah, so it's it's a little cheesy to open with sort of a reference out of the gate, but it really is something that I heard early on in my career, and it just landed with me. And it was Steve Jobs at a Stanford commencement, and he's addressing the crowd, and he basically says, to paraphrase, that you can't connect the dots looking forward, right? And the example he used is that he spent one semester at a community college. He took a calligraphy course, and that ended up being the font for the first Macintosh computer, right? Like nobody would have planned that, right? But it worked out. And so for me, that's always meant that, have a plan, but get busy and don't let the plan get in the way of you being busy, because you never know how you're going to get there. And so if you look at my career, you go through my LinkedIn profile, it would very much look like somebody who just kept getting busy with the next opportunity. But then I look back now in the role that I'm in, and I don't think I could have crafted a better career path across healthcare and athletics to be senior vice president of a physiotherapy and rehabilitation company, right? So it just worked out. And so there's probably a little bit of, well, that makes sense because I'm in the role, and I'm sort of finding a way to make that fit. But truthfully, I don't think I could have designed a career path any better to get me to where I am today. But it wasn't as intentional as it sounds or looks. So,
Right.
yeah.
So for those, and now people will look at your LinkedIn profile. So we're going to connect a bit of the dots. So some healthcare outside of university, that was really your initial kind of transition. You can talk a little bit about that. And then a big shift like into the sports industry, which is, now you might have done something in between there as well, but just categorically, corporate, healthcare, sport, corporate, healthcare is how I kind of envision it. And is that right? And was that not intentional? And now that you look back on it, the sports piece, obviously where you're working today, great correlation between the two. And I can see how it would benefit each other. But that obviously was not the initial goal in moving away from corporate Canada into more of a sports oriented role.
Yeah. So, and I should say that, at each juncture, it was done with intention. And so if I time blocked them, out of school, I took a job with HSBC because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right at that state, I was deciding between law school and a job with the banks, and ultimately, I decided that law school was going to cost me $100,000 to figure out if I liked it, and banking was going to pay me to figure out if I liked it. So that became an easy decision. So set out banking, and then I realized that I didn't want sort of a full career. So it was either CFA or MBA. And I knew that I didn't want to be intrinsically tied to finance. I had a skill set in it. I enjoyed it, but I wanted to find an industry. So I went the MBA route. And while I was at business school, I found healthcare as an industry, which is ironic because my father is a physician and my mother's side of the family owned and operated long-term care and retirement homes. So I had grown up around healthcare, but I never envisioned being able to work in healthcare without having a clinical background. I just hadn't really thought about it. But then I realized just how much was going on in healthcare, and healthcare isn't just hospitals and doctors and nurses. There's a lot more to it. But I also recognized that I couldn't get a job in healthcare because I had no experience. So I did what any good MBA does, and I went to graduate school and went into management consulting, right? So I joined Deloitte's consulting practice.
I'd forgotten that. I left that out of it. So you did do consulting for a little while.
Yeah. And that was my chance. And I really just angled really, really hard to get into the healthcare practice. I didn't really belong there, but I sold them on the idea that there was going to be more M&A-like activity and transactions happening in the industry, and that there would be a role for me on
Salesman. But you're a salesperson too.
Yeah, exactly. And so was there, and that was sort of really my foray into healthcare, and then spun off into a group that owned non-hospital healthcare assets. So home medical equipment, non-hospital surgical centers, physio company, which turned out to be Lifemark, home care, et cetera, et cetera. And then worked through a couple of those chapters until I got a tap on the shoulder to see if I was interested in being the president general manager of a professional rugby team in Canada. And the 12-year-old boy in me jumped up and down and said 100%. And, externally I said, give me a minute. I got to check in with my wife because this is a pretty big shift. And to her credit, Nora basically said something along the lines of, well, you're about due for another midlife crisis. So why wouldn't we change gears and you go run a pro sports team? Yeah.
How many midlife crises was that prior to?
Well, I mean, you could argue that at each one of these stages, I was going through some kind of, identity. Who am I? What am I going to do next? And I kept changing gears, but all
What
with
is
sort of
that? Sorry to cut you up, but back up a bit. Why is that? Like, what is it about the individual or people that it's not that the career's not, flourishing and that they're not doing well, but then they're like, you know what? There comes a point where I want to switch things up a little bit. Is it serendipitous? Is it opportunities that present themselves? Is it just us as humans that are like, okay, I've had enough of that. Let's try something different. Not in a bad way, but just trying to re-challenge themselves.
Boy, it's a good question because there are folks who are like get on a path and progress through one company and can see it within, the opportunities for growth, or to find a station where they're happy and life is good. What I know is for me, and I'm sure it's got something to do with, the growing up in athletics, and despite the fact that I was sort of not necessarily the most gifted athletically, but it was goal oriented, right? And it was sort of go after this and attack this and have a plan. And so for me, this just kind of felt like the fit. It was get busy on the next plan and keep going and keep growing. Boy, it's a good question because there are times where I've sort of thought, gee, I wish I could just stay somewhere for 5 years. And actually that is my stated goal here is that, when I'm done at Lifemark, it's actually sort of closer to retirement. And the kids, when asked, like, what did your dad do? He was at Lifemark, right? Like all the other stuff was just the blocks to get me here. So I think there's also a bit of a life stage piece there as well, at least for me. Yeah.
I still get my kids to tell people I'm a ski racer, retired ski racer.
I love it. Yeah.
It doesn't show up anywhere on my resume, and we didn't even have Facebook back then. So there's literally zero pictures of me ever skiing. So I don't know. I think people might believe some of it, but either way. Okay, so your first point in terms of what you'd recommend someone to think about, you did shared the Steve Jobs analogy or messaging that he used. So what is the actual takeaway for the first piece, though?
Have a plan, but don't let the plan get in the way of action and you moving on it, so to speak, right? Like you don't know how it's going to play out, right? That's what I'm saying. But if you know how it feels in the moment, and just trust that like you made the right decision for you in the moment, and that those will, when you add them up and when you look back on things, it'll make sense in a way that you never could have pictured from the outset. Yeah.
So the second most important thing or something you'd like to share around where you're at today, what would that be?
About where I'm at today, I would say relationships matter, and be very careful if you're going to burn a bridge because it's a really small world. And case in point, one, I mentioned that I led the divestiture of Lifemark at 100 clinics. So I knew the business and that could have gone a multitude of ways, but it went in a way where they wanted me to join and just wasn't the right timing. Right. The other great example that I have of that is when I was at Deloitte, there was a manager in the practice who I worked well with, but consulting is a pretty intense environment. And so, you got to be mindful, and it can be a little cutthroat at times. Anyway, that manager at Deloitte who I worked with is now the CEO of Lifemark. And so 15 years later, here I am back working with somebody who I worked with 15 years ago. So it's relationships matter, burning bridges, like be very, very careful. Like I would say, it may feel like, later dude, like I'm out of here kind of thing, but be very careful at any stage in your career or any stage in life. I would say you can exit a room politely and discreetly. You don't need the mic drop, so to speak. And I think there's some folks who are a little bit fast and loose with that I've seen, and it may not come back to bite you, but why leave that out there that could come back around?
I think if you're going to go out and be an entrepreneur, you can get away with a little bit more of that, where, working for corporate Canada, I can tell you the number of times I've overlapped with past clients, colleagues, or even bosses, especially in Toronto. It's unbelievably, as big a city as it is, it's incredibly small in the respective industry that you're tied to. So that could work for you and against you, depending on the reputation that you've built for yourself. I think where that's incredibly important is for younger people coming out of university. And having interviewed hundreds of them and watching them progress their careers over the first 6 months, 1 year, year and a half, and then they're already getting antsy in terms of what the next thing is. They feel as though maybe the opportunity isn't what they thought it was going to be. But my encouraging, I know this is about you, Tim, but the one thing to build upon your thought, the relationship piece, just tap the brakes a little bit, be patient, treat everyone with respect, learn as much as you possibly can. And if you do decide to leave, that's fine, to your point. Like,
Yep.
you can't control that. And if opportunity knocks, but you have to do it in an eloquent way that you're not causing yourself problems down the road. I think that's a great one. And I can see it, with lots of people that I come across in my industry.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting.
And I would say that, I should point out that it could look or could be misconstrued as though I was a little cavalier and I jumped at new opportunities and left and sort of went diagonal. And that would be not an accurate representation of it. Some of the guys that we know like to joke about that. They're like, Matthew's, boy, like 18 months, that's a long time for you to be in one place.
Yeah.
But mine were all very sort of intentional and handled on the up and up. And it was like on the wrap of a mandate or a project or with well advanced notice, like never left anybody hanging and just sort of, minimum notice and out of there kind of thing. So like, while I have moved quite a bit in the career, it's always been done with the longer term and longitudinal relationships in mind. I wouldn't want anyone to get the impression that like, you're jumping from leapfrogging from pad to pad kind of thing. Like you've got to be mindful about how and when you do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other part that gets missed, certainly if you look at someone's LinkedIn profile or CV, there's usually two things that lead to that departure. Either you're being encouraged to depart and you can feel that. That's a materially different outcome than someone that's incredibly marketable and there's a neat opportunity that presents itself. So that's the other thing. As you're looking, and I'm just thinking of it from the hiring perspective, when you're looking at someone's CV or the path that they took and why it was, I think that's an important thing to distinguish between one another. So good point. And then Tim, I can't believe it. You're already on your third point. So in terms of where we're at already, the way I've written it down, like no specific path and just be open to what that opportunities as they come. Yep. Don't think that it needs to be a clean line of sight into point A to point B. Second one being relationships. Don't burn any. Leave a good reputation and build one for yourself over your career because you never know who you're going to cross paths with. And then is there a third one that you'd also share with the group?
There's nothing too creative about this one. And it wouldn't surprise anybody that knows me that like when I look at bringing on new talent or with folks, particularly with young and sort of coming out of school, it's, willingness and aptitude to take on new challenges. And that's a really fancy way of saying you gotta work hard and you gotta have an element of the figure it out element, right? Like it's, right. If you have those two things, like you will advance. You'd be surprised sort of when looking back on your career, like, and it was actually very similar to my experience in sports. Like I was never the most talented out of the gate, but I do know that I worked harder than most people. And in the end, I ended up being a better skier than I should have been, a way better rugby player than I ever should have been, because I just worked hard and found ways to figure it out rather than waiting for things to come my way, right? Or do, what do they say that when talent doesn't work, hard work beats talent, something along those lines kind of thing. Like, and there's no secret, I haven't seen a secret recipe, and it's shared amongst the folks that I've seen be successful in any realm of, profession, is just hard work, and that figure it out element has to be there. Like there's no shortcut. Yeah.
Do people come into these roles with that? Is that a character trait? Do you teach that to somebody? Is that even possible?
I think it's hard to teach later in life. You know what I mean? Like that's just something that has to come from within, or just like an awakening moment. People realize that it's no longer good enough. And, I think that's okay, because there's things that we're naturally good at, that you don't have to work as hard to be good at. But at some point, unless you are, the 0.01% in whatever field it is, and then in that case, you can be a jerk to anybody, right? I mean, that's the truth, right? Like Tiger Woods can be a jerk. Right. Wayne Gretzky could have been a jerk. He wasn't, but like Elon Musk, these guys, like you can be a jerk when you're the greatest of the great, but everybody else, you got to work hard, like you got to work real hard to get there. I think either you figure that out or you don't. And if you're not even that conscious about it, then maybe you're okay that you didn't figure it out and you can have a good life. But, if you want to have buddies like you and sort of run in certain circles, you got to work hard, man. Like you can't tell me that it's been easy and you kind of just got by. Like, I know you work hard. Look at you're doing this as a thing on the side of your desk, well, with 2 kids and a wife and a life and a big job, right? So it's, yeah, you're not coasting. I don't know anybody that is. Yeah.
And do you think that, I know I'm going to go back to the academy because there's a commonality there, but because I have an opinion on it, but ski academy, was that taught to you then? Was it through your parents, in your upbringing, the hard work part?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think certainly there's a household that you grow up in element for sure that is either there, but then you get into an environment like we were in high school. I think it takes a special person to be in that competitive environment and not care if you're coming last every time you do a 400 meter or you're not lifting as much as others in the weight room. Like, I don't know how you would be there and not be competitive and see that, if I want to do more body weight rhythm squats than Liam Ellis, I'm going to have to really, like that kind of stuff. Like, you find those
Right.
those areas where you're competing. So yeah, I think it was a head start for sure. When I got to places when I thought I was in cruise control, others were thinking they were working pretty hard, and I was just used to, the RPMs going a little bit higher than most. Now, that can get you into trouble. Don't get me wrong, but and I'm not saying you do that at the expense of enjoying life, but I have yet to see too many examples of folks who succeed without working real hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I can count on maybe one hand those that fall into those opportunities. No, I do remember, and it's funny as I'm thinking about it, we keep saying the academy. So just so we're clear, everybody, National Ski Academy, we didn't go to the cadets. We were not in the Army, although that would have been pretty admirable as well. But the Ski Academy, it was a high level of training for ski racing here in Canada at a very young age. So yeah, I do remember, for me personally, there's no way before I went to that place was I doing a 40-minute run up a mountain at 6 in the morning. I promise you. And I probably never would have done it. My parents were not that they should have been, but they were not the ones out there saying, okay, let's go. Let's bang out an hour up the mountain today. I'm like, no. So without that as a reference, and I remember, I think I probably lost like 20 pounds my first 8 days on our first trip ever. And yeah, I felt good, but not like it was just such a new experience for me. So I do attribute a lot of just reference. So, because the reality is people's relative hard work, it's different across multiple areas. Like, some of it's in academics, some of it's in sport, some of it's mental toughness. Like, there's a multitude of different ways you can become tough or hard work. So I find these things fascinating. I think about it all too much. In fact, with all the people that we work with and just trying to do self-reflection on how to improve my own skill set, but still fascinating, and I love it.
So it's interesting as you're talking, and I'm thinking about it. I think one of the things that we were really fortunate from that experience is that because I'm watching my kids come through it now at school, and you see what it's like grades 6, 7, and 8, and you get into high school, and what the Ski Academy did for us was that it was very clear that it was cool to work hard, whereas in other channels, it's not cool to work hard, and that element, the sooner you kick that element, however you do it, and it can be anywhere, right? Like, I'm watching my daughter do it in dance. One of our sons do it in band. He's in a rock band, but it's not cool if he shows up to rehearsal and he hasn't learned the pieces. So it's making it cool to work hard, and then the word cool just drops off, right? At some point, I mean, that's one of the luxuries of aging, is that you just don't give a shit anymore. Sorry if we can't swear on the podcast, but
we're swearing. This is a swearing podcast.
But it's just a wonderful thing that the word cool doesn't. But when the word cool still matters, that we were in an environment where it was cool to work hard, and it was celebrated. That, I think, was a huge advantage for us. I think it would be disingenuous not to acknowledge that. So I completely agree with you. Yeah.
So, Tim, you're off the hook, buddy. That was the podcast. You've covered the 3 most important things that you'd encourage someone to think about in pursuing their own career. The reality is it has less to do with your existing career choice or being in the healthcare space, only that I think it's important, knowing that is the field that you've landed in. Anybody that's coming out of school or looking to switch gears into that category of kind of career choice and industry and sector, it's perfect. I mean, it's so transferable in terms of the 3 things that you've highlighted for us today. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate you sharing, and I hope you had a good time on the Go Get It podcast.
This was great, man. Yeah, thanks for the invite. And I do hope that in the near future, we're going to be able to arc some turns together. Can we make that happen?
Well, I'm going to call you out now because I think I'm in the same boat as you. All of our friends, they do these crazy trips with helicopters and backpacks and avalanche. I don't want to do that.
Can we just go to like blue square, machine groomed corduroy?
Yeah.
Like, can we do that?
Well, that's my reputation now. Like I'm not even, they don't even invite me to these things anymore because I don't want to do them. I genuinely want to go to the restaurant. I like that part. Yeah. Kind of like the hot tub, and I just want to ski groomers. That's my wheelhouse now.
Hey, buddy, that's my jam these days. I don't need to get hurt ever again.
Exactly.
So or like upside down in a tree well. Like these guys tell these stories, and I'm like, nope, no thanks. Like, you realize that you're doing the opposite of enticing me to come on this trip. It sounds awful.
It sounds awful, and you're asking me to pay for this? At least you can go to check yourself into Lifemark when you're done.
Well, this is true. This is true. Yeah. Right on, pal.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. Hi to Nora and the family. And
likewise.
I'll send you some updated content and edited pieces as I work on it over the next month.
Okay. Sounds great, man.
Hey, buddy. All the best.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
Take care. Joe.
Let's go.
Hey, this is Rob Butler on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening to what it is we can bring to your career evolution. And if you liked our guest, feel free to 1, follow us, and 2, put a question in the reel, and hopefully our interviewee can respond to that question directly. With that, I'd like to encourage you to join us on next week's edition on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks again.